Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. In case you didn't recognise her, that's Connie Nielsen on the screen. She's not an American, she's Danish. I've seen her in a few movies. And the usual question, would I date her? Nope, she's 5'10", so she's about 5 inches taller than me, even without wearing heels. And even if we got together, as she's more or less my age now, and we got on, it would be like Bernie Ecclestone and his former wife, Slavia. So it would be just embarrassing for both of us. So, as before, it'd be interesting to see what she looks like in real life, if her super wealthy and our orbits crossed. But apart from that, nah, she's just far too tall. Anyway, enough about Connie. As you know, the birth rate has been declining in Western world for quite some time, and I think the governments now are starting to get seriously worried. In fact, they're going beyond seriously worried, because looking around, I found this. Now, this is Business Insider. This was done on September the 14th last year. As you can see, that's Musk. And Musk has consistently argued that the greatest threat is the collapsing birth rate. And governments in Europe and the US are taking steps to combat falling birth rates. Now, if you click on that, it brings up this. Falling birth rates are freaking countries out and spawning dubious fixes like tax breaks, cheaper cars, and free surgery. And then it just gives you a load of information about what they're trying to do to counteract this falling birth rate. And Musk, incidentally, he's fathered 14 children. While Musk has been a vocal advocate of decreasing birth rates, but demographics told Business Insider that he is not directly responsible for governments taking action. Well, he's been fathering children on his own, so he doesn't need government to take action. But French president has called for a demographic rearmament, and the French government's pledged to replace the current low-paid rental leave with new, better-paid birth leave. But who's going to pay for that? Answer: men currently in work. This would offer parents several months of leave around half their salary, capped at €1,900 or around $2,200 a month. In other words, men will have to pay more taxes to pay for that. Spain has passed a new family law expanding paid maternal and paternal leave to 17 weeks, while some regions, including the capital, Madrid, expanded their baby check programs. Italy, with a low birth rate, is leaning on financial incentives in January. Mother of 2 or more children have qualified for lifetime payroll breaks, and families can access zero interest first home loans alongside child allowances. But who's going to pay for that? Hungary extended its policy of January, granting lifetime income personal tax exemptions to mothers of 2 or more children. Here in Britain, the launched the most ambitious early years reform for decades. Starting in September, parents of children as young as 9 months will be eligible for 30 years of free child care a week. But who's paying for it? And over in America, the US passed a federal package in July expanding family tax credits and creating new savings accounts under the banner of Working Families Tax Cut. But all the other taxes Americans have to pay, who's going to be paying for it? It's all very well giving all these things, but you've got to work out a way how the income is going to pay for this expenditure. And it said Musk and some other commentators have only made the issue more visible. As governments set up pro-nationalist measures, demographic experts told Business Insider it will be a mistake to see Musk and other tech leaders as the driver of these policy shifts. And then, concern with low birth rates is nothing new, and certainly nothing that anyone in the tech world, and certainly not Musk, should get any credit for originating or leading on. and then more yada yada, on and on and on. Now, fast forward to 9th of April this year. I found this in Al Jazeera. US fertility rate drops to an all-time low. Has been now in decline for 2 years, dropped to nearly 23% since 2007. Fertility in America has dropped its all-time low. Data released by US Centers for Disease Control shows that fertility rate 53.1 births per 1,000 women. And where's the bit that took my eye? Falling birth rates have grabbed the attention of a policymaker, with some seeking to roll out tools to incentivize young couples to have children. You've got to get married first, unless you're going to live in sin, over the brush, as they used to say. The administration of Trump promised to embrace pro-birth policies, sometimes referred to as pro-natalist policies. The administration touted new guidance to increase access to IVF treatments as evidence that the Republican Party was the party of parents. No doubt that's going to be a slogan for the coming 2028 presidential election. And such steps have been paired with enormous reductions in access to government health care and other social programs. And more yada yada. Far-right politicians have become fixated on falling birth rates in Western countries, using them to promote a narrative that white majorities should be replaced by migrants from non-Western countries. In other words, brown people who don't have the same skills or experience to keep a first world industrial nation going. Now that's Al Jazeera. To back that up, I found this. US Census Bureau. US fertility continues to drop to still high in some countries now. What took my eye was this. The fertility rate from the top to the bottom, less than 60. You notice California is virtually all in the lower section, and the state above California and Seattle. There's Maine, there's New York and the eastern states, there's Florida, and I think that's New Mexico. You notice the liberal democratic run states have a low birth rate, and the states with the high feminism have a low birth rate. That's there and there, especially in California. Just something that took my eye. So if you're an American, just pick out the state you're in. Like if you were in, whoops, didn't think I'd do that. And it'll give you an idea of the birth rate in your particular area. Not in universe, the Midwestern states. I don't know why that's white. Could be because the Midwestern states are generally of a low population anyway. But the high numbers of births do not always equal high fertility. To back up California, this Los Angeles County, California, well below the line. Well, as we know, California is one of the main pillars of feminism in America. Now, this is also the National Center for Health Statistics, which backs up that one. The thing which took my eye was this. Percentage unmarried. 39.5% of women in America are single mothers. No guy in his right mind is going to date a single mother. Why raise somebody else's genes? And this bit also took my eye. The average age of her first birth, 27.6 years. In other words, she's approaching the wall at 30, and she has baby rabies. That's something to bear in mind. Moving on, the feminists also have noticed the backlash and the low birth rate, and they don't want to be blamed for it, as I found this in Ms. They blame feminism for falling birth rates, but data says it's saving families. That is debatable. The right has sounded the alarm over declining birth rates while cutting the supports and restricting the tools many families rely on to have children at all. And where's the bit that took me eye? Where is it? Sorry about this, people. Here we go. The real threat to US families isn't feminism, it's policy failure. Feminism didn't abandon marriage. For many women, it eliminated forced unequal economic dependent marriages. That's all well and good, but it doesn't mention that women are these days quite picky. The US Bureau of Statistics says couples who both work and contribute financially both report higher satisfaction and lower divorce rates. Well, there's a lower divorce rate because so many men are not wanting to get married, so the divorce rate naturally will go down, especially when both partners feel autonomy and agency. Stability doesn't come from dependency, it comes from choice. When women have education, income and independence, they don't marry because they have to, they marry because they want to. But the guy that they want to marry, if he's in a lower tax income band than them and he didn't go to college, they're not going to marry down. They want one who's equal or better, but they forget that better educated and better paid men have options. And he said, feminism didn't abandon marriage. For many women, it eliminated forced unequal economic dependent marriage. True. We don't want forced marriages. Millennials and Gen Z aren't rejecting a family, they're seeking it out in different ways. They want partnerships, but she'll take half your stuff, rooted in mutual respect, till she gets bored and she takes half your stuff, shared responsibility and financial security. Dual income households, DINKOs, double income, no kids, where both partners have agency, consistently report higher satisfaction and lower divorce rates. But once again, the number of guys getting married are dropping, so the divorce rates naturally are dropping. And it says the real threat to US families isn't feminism, it's policy failure when childcare costs rival rent, when parental leave is non-existent, when health care is unaffordable, when early education programs are the chopping block. People don't stop wanting families, they stop being able to afford them. Tell that to your mothers and your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers. There was nothing like that in their era. And until we address this reality, no amount of cultural blaming shifting will change the outcome. Well, that's Ms. Another feminist outlet I found was this, feminist majority. The answer to falling birth rates isn't more pressure on women. This was done June 23rd. This one was done the 5th of June. And it says, at the same time, women are not necessarily avoiding parenthood altogether. Many are simply prioritizing other milestones before having children. In other words, they're choosing a career, including pursuing higher education, building careers, securing financial stability and purchasing a home. Raising a family is a major financial and personal commitment, and many women are choosing to wait. But they're waiting and waiting and waiting. In the meantime, guys are not bothering because they're getting older, they're getting more picky, they're having the fun in their 20s, and no guy wants a woman who was a town bike. And then the current fertility data reflects only a movement in time. According to this Martha Bailey, economics professor, well, she would say that, wouldn't she? Women who have completed their childbearing years to average 1.9 to 2 children. In other words, many women are simply delaying parenthood rather than deciding against it entirely. Excuse me. And says women should not be expected to raise the issue on their own. Society as a whole, including the federal government, must be part of the solution. Daddy government. Yet the US have done little to create conditions that would make raising children more affordable. Policies such as paid parental leave and accessible, affordable childcare remain limited at the federal level. Once again, all this stuff needs to be paid. And then that's that. Now, the backlash against men. I've found a few things. This is a site called Unheard, written by a woman. No surprises there. How men screwed the birth rate. Too many are directionless dolts. Now this is based in Britain. The Reform, the would-be party of government. The Kruger, he says, he's not interested in the love life. The reform policies, there are no plans to touch no-fault divorces, no handmaiden, no mother's medals after all. The biggest thing, these anti-woman fascists, so we're anti-women fascists now, wanted to do seemed to be introduction of household taxation. Are you getting all that? Labour's false outrage and opportunity for a tidy bit of political point scoring seem for naught. So if you're British and you wanted to vote reform, they're not going to do anything about no-fault divorces because they're scared to death of losing the women vote. Now regarding MGTOW, I don't find anything specifically, but as you can see, I played around with words and it came up with this. The US fertility rate has hit historic lows, 1.6 births per woman, well below the 2-1 replacement level. While MGTOW, men going their own way movements, rejection of marriage and traditional relationships contributes to this. So the MGTOW effect is having an effect. Broad economic factors like high living costs are the primary drivers. The role of MGTOW encourages men to avoid marriage, cohabitation, long-term relationships, to focus on personal autonomy, by actively avoiding destructive, we all know that. Cultural impact. While MGTOW remains a distinct subculture, it reflects the broader cultural shift of young men feeling alienated by changing gender dynamics and the high perceived risk of modern family law. Now if you click on that, it brings up the article. Statistical weight. While men withdrawing from dating and the marriage pool directly impacts fertility, demographics consider MGTOW a fringe movement. It is part of a wider systematic drop in relationship formation rather than the primary cause of national declines. Now, if you drop to the bottom, declining birth rates means a rapid aging population demographics, and the congressional budget project that net national migration will soon be the only driver of US population growth. No mention of all the babies that are aborted in America. None whatsoever. Now that is that. Now, also found this. The US facing a demographic milestone as fertility rate hits 1.7 blah blah blah. A primary driver is dating recession, where many men are increasing opting out of romance due to app burnout, financial strain, and changing social expectations. Now dropping back to that, where is it? The bit that caught my eye. Where fringe movement. Something caught my eye. Date recession. They say we're just a tiny minority, a fringe movement. Now, they said that about the fans of the various franchises in the US entertainment industry, the Star Wars and the MGTOW cinematic universe, or as it's known now as the MCU. Now, Star Wars is on its deathbed because the fans, the supposed tiny minority, have just refused to go and watch any of the trash that's Hollywood's coming out associated with the franchise. So saying, where is it? Country, down the pool, broader impacts. They say we're just a tiny minority, but they said they're about the entertainment industry. So this is a load of bullshit and deflection to how big the MGTOW the MGTOW mindset is affecting the birth rate. So they say that it's dating a recession, I covered last week. And to top this off, because I'm on 20 minutes now, I found this bit, Independent. This was done 17th of March this year. Men are getting the blame for female unplanned childlessness. So they're blaming men for it. This is a piece done by her. Report reveals that men's immaturity is partly to blame for the crash in the birth rate because many men don't feel ready for children. Primarily, people can see that women are up against. Well, if you're in the detail, she's a 38-year-old. In other words, what was she doing in her 20s? Probably sleeping around with Chad and Tyrone. My biological clock has a ticking time bomb. I have a low ovarian reserve, empty egg carton. If I wanted a child, it was emergency stations. You drop down. The biggest hurdle isn't my fertility falling off a cliff, but that my partner, you notice not husband, not boyfriend, just partner, wasn't ready to have kids with me. Young women now feel vindicated after years of being the focus of the baby game. Research is catching up with what women have to know for years. It takes two to tango. If women can't find men willing to settle down and commit, they can, but the women are too picky. Having a baby becomes much harder, not impossible, but definitely not easy. And then the solution, according to the report, is to encourage marriage at a young age for men to enter adulthood. In other words, they're blaming men for it. This can be achieved by offering more internships and apprenticeships so that men have to mature faster. In other words, they're thinking men are just babies. It claims 9 out of 10 young women hope to have children, but many face unplanned childlessness, a major cause of grief that could affect up to 30% of women in the UK. What about all the babies that are aborted in the UK? What about all the women that think they can play around in their 20s when they should be actively searching for a husband? And then I could easily be my story of lucky to have children in my late 30s, early 40s, and I generally stopped reading after that. But Musk is worried about it. The US government fertility rates dropped, but feminism think that they're not responsible, and it's this little article, they're blaming guys about it, and the role of MGTOW philosophy encourages men actively avoiding. While MGTOW remains a distinct subculture, it reflects a broader cultural shift, so the MGTOW effect is having an effect on the national birth rate. So we're going to have to wait and see, but American fertility rate is at an all-time low, and it's going to be even more lower in the future as the birth rate drops and MGTOW continues to grow and women remain too picky. I think I'm well over 20 minutes now, so I'll have to stop it there. I'll naturally put all these links below, so you know the routine, people, like, dislike, etc. Completely up to you. So until next Monday, I'll see if I can find something more in the MGTOW spectrum. But for now, that's it from me. Bye bye.